tonight, as he has been since the day of the explosion. Dan, the ceremony will take place right there where you are tonight in the Westray Park.
Yes, that's right, Steve, here at the Westray Memorial Park. Obviously, this ceremony will have special meaning for the 26 families, the families of the men who were killed in the Westray explosion, and especially for the 11 families who were unable to recover the bodies of their loved ones. For them, Steve, this is really hallowed ground. This is the only gravesite they have to come and visit and reflect on the loved ones which they've lost.
And I suppose the only gravesite they have left to visit is right where you are tonight.
Yes, that's true, Steve. This monument was built over the area where the explosion occurred, where many of the men were killed. Now, throughout this week, they've been looking for answers, and throughout the 4 years looking for answers. This week, they've heard some disturbing testimony at the Westray Public Inquiry. The inquiry didn't sit today, and that was out of respect for the families and the men who were killed. For the families, they say they're glad to have that break, not only to reflect on the meaning of the day, but a chance to really reflect on what they've heard in testimony at the inquiry and what they will continue to hear when the inquiry resumes on Monday.
A somber day indeed. Thanks very much, Dan.
Yes.
ATV's Dan McIntosh in New Glasgow tonight. It is mystery solved in New Brunswick tonight. It's now almost 2 days since several pieces of women's clothing were found near a highway just outside St. John. Now, the Mounties suspected that a woman was recently assaulted at the site. ATV's Mike Cameron takes us through the investigation to tonight's surprising conclusion.
This is the so-called CPIC police computer. It has access to a national registry of missing people. RCMP entered a description of each item of clothing found this week in Westfield. A woman's jeans, underwear, socks, and shoes were found adjacent to Highway 7. Stains suspected of being bloodstains were sent for analysis. Before the clothing was removed and sent to the crime lab in Halifax, the RCMP took a lot of photographs of this area. The RCMP helicopter was called in to take aerial photos of the site.
Rather than something happen down the road, if a person does show up or a body shows up, then we can have the terrain as it is now.
Police also took many calls from the public about vehicles recently parked in the area, but no missing persons.
Well, we've not received any reports of new missing people in the province over the last period of time.
Late this afternoon, the mystery was solved. RCMP received a call from a woman in Plaster Rock who says her teenage daughter was violently ill in the car on the way home from St. John. The family ditched the stained clothing in the bushes near the highway. So did police go overboard?
I think it's an indication that the police do, in fact, do everything they can to solve cases when they come up. Some people will say it's going overboard, but if they're erring at all, they're erring on the side of caution. I think that's commendable.
So the RCMP in Westfield is satisfied with the explanation. The woman who called from Plaster Rock, apparently she was able to describe the jeans to a T. This might also explain why police were hesitant to describe the stains on the jeans as bloodstains. So Steve, you'll have some police officers out in Westfield this evening getting a more restful sleep.
Yes, and there it is. Case closed tonight.
It is.
Thanks very much. ATV's Mike Cameron live tonight in St. John. Well, it isn't exactly good news, but it's not quite as bad as originally expected. The new business plan for the Cape Breton coal mines calls for 140-odd fewer layoffs than originally proposed. ATV's Peter Ryan with details tonight.
The Cape Breton Development Corporation is under attack from a variety of competitors, whether it be the oil and gas sector, or indeed whether it be the marketing of coal from other countries and other places. So it must be viable, and it must be competitive.
The long-awaited final plan for the financially troubled coal industry in Cape Breton, the elimination of 658 jobs. That's 120 fewer job losses than first proposed. Over half of those affected by the downsizing will receive early retirement packages. The remainder will receive a $27,000 severance package each. However, union officials argue the number of workers who will lose their jobs is actually higher than what was announced today.
There's 57 jobs that went out of this industry that were counted in the original package that we negotiated. They're not being counted in the 658 number. If you add them in, there's 715 job losses.
The union also argues the number of job losses could have been minimized if union proposals were acted on. However, Area MP and Health Minister Dave Dingwall says all proposals were taken into account.
There will be a study on selective mining at the Princess Colliery. approximately $300,000, again made by the employee unions. The Phelan mine to increase its production from 1.6 million to 1.9 million tons, again made by employee unions.
And another highlight, Steve, the Prince Colliery, one of two here in industrial Cape Breton, will now operate year-round as opposed to 4 months of the year as first proposed. All of this is being made possible by a loan, $79 million from the federal government. However, DevCo has been told no more money. They have to become self-sufficient, so the next 5 years will dictate whether or not DevCo will survive in the coal industry, Steve.
And that closes the book on this one.
Exactly.
Thanks very much, Peter. ATV's Peter Ryan live tonight in industrial Cape Breton. Well, after almost 45 years, St. John Ambulance is pulling its ambulance service out of the province of New Brunswick. It seems there just aren't enough volunteers anymore to keep those ambulances running. That means the province will have to step in to provide more service. ATV's Kate Letterick has that story for you tonight.
We're presently transporting a 61-year-old patient back to the residence.
For 3 years, Tim McDonald has been volunteering for St. John Ambulance. He's a fully certified emergency medical technician and has gone through more than 250 hours of training. Unfortunately, volunteers like McDonald have become harder to find, and it's taken its toll on the organization.
That effective in mid-September of this year, that St. John Ambulance will be withdrawing its volunteer ambulance services.
The decision to pull the ambulance service out of New Brunswick came as a surprise to McDonald.
It's disappointing. We put a lot of work in as volunteers, and we just hope to see some continuing service for New Brunswick.
Barbara Wallace has been an ambulance volunteer for 13 years.
I cry a little bit because to me it's like, I've given a lot of my life to this because I really believe in what I do.
The St. John Ambulance provides a number of valuable services, such as transporting patients from nursing homes to the hospital. It costs taxpayers about $815,000 a year to fund the service, but Health Minister Russ King says replacing it will likely double that figure.
We've made a commitment and that we will get service all over New Brunswick and service of a uniform standard, so you have to pay a price for that.
A province-wide ambulance system is in the works, but King says he's not sure exactly how it will be implemented. But St. John Ambulance plans to stay around long enough to help with the transition. In Fredericton, Kate Letterick, ATV News.
The province of Nova Scotia is withdrawing from the Krever inquiry court challenge. The province's former health ministers and the Red Cross are fighting to stop Justice Krever from naming who's to blame for Canada's tainted blood scandal. But now that 3 provincial ministers have withdrawn from the case, Premier John Savage says there's no reason for the province to stay in. AIDS activist Janet Connors tonight.
Personally, it's thrilling for me and certainly on the national level, for the public health issue. I'm ecstatic.
As the Premier indicated, we'd be withdrawing from the Krever challenge because there are no defendants. They agreed to drop their charge or drop their suit.
Earlier this week, former Nova Scotia health ministers pulled back their challenge to Krever. They said the truth was more important than protecting themselves. Families of suicide victims will finally have access to a report prepared for the Cape Breton Regional Hospital. 2 Dalhousie University psychiatrists conducted a review last year after 2 former hospital patients took their own lives. ATV's Nicole Brown joins us live tonight. Families took their protests to the legislature today. Nicole, what happened there?
Well, that's right, Steve. The news came to the families here in Halifax this morning after the Cape Breton Regional Hospital announced it will go along with the recommendation of the province's Freedom of Information Commissioner. Now, while that's one victory, the families say they're going to fight on for a public inquiry.
In their opinion, used car salesmen, in contrast, have the cost.
It began as a silent protest, 3 families looking for answers after 3 painful suicides. The Victims of Suicide Society took its fight to a meeting of the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Halifax.
I hope to God that you think about what's happened here. I've lost my brother to a doctor's.
Next, it was on to Province House. The Whites and the Berries have been pushing for access to a Cape Breton Regional Hospital report on Ronnie White and Marion Godden's suicides. Today, the hospital agreed to release that report.
We're prepared to live with that adjudication. I would like to see the report released as quickly as possible.
The families are pleased with the move, but they want more.
We're kind of skeptical about it. We're hoping that it's not watered down or anything's not blocked out.
It's not only the families of the suicide victims who want answers. Opposition members hammered away at the health minister during question period today, even insisting on a public inquiry.
There are a lot of details that need to be revealed, a lot of questions that need to be answered.
For the Kane family of North Preston, any answers will do. 24-year-old Yolanda Kane took her life while in the care of the Nova Scotia hospital, but the Kanes say the health minister will do nothing to help.
No, I have no comments at the moment.
Why?
I have to get up.
We want answers. How come you won't meet with us? Why won't you meet with us?
Even a late afternoon meeting with the Premier offers the Kanes little solace.
I'm still looking for answers. I think they're covering up something. They're hiding something.
Premier Savage says he's restricted in what he can do for the Kane family, Steve. The Kanes now have a lawsuit pending against the Nova Scotia hospital, so the Premier says for now his hands are tied. The hospital, for its part, says it has released Yolanda Kane's records to the family, and it is in no position to release an internal review to the family. Steve?
All right, we'll keep an eye on this one. Thanks very much, Nicole Brown, live tonight in Halifax. Well, the Moncton company that makes video lottery terminals has won a $4 million contract in Europe. Spelo Gaming International will supply Sweden's National Lottery Corporation with machines. The Dieppe-based company employs more than 100 people. It already operates or supplies terminals in 7 provinces, South America and Australia. All right, still ahead here tonight, the forest fire season in the region. With much of the maritime woodlands getting dry, how ready are we to fight forest fires? That's coming up later. But first,
the people should be in the streets trying to display to other people in the community that they have certain sex values.
Many of our MPs vote against the controversial gay rights legislation. One of the most controversial pieces of legislation ever introduced into the House of Commons is expected to pass within a few minutes. It is Bill C-33 to amend the Human Rights Act to add sexual orientation to the list of prohibited grounds for discrimination in Canada. Now, at least 6 members of Parliament from the Atlantic provinces are voting against this bill. But as ATV's Jacqueline Milcharak tells us tonight, most of our MPs are voting for it.
Ms. Clancy. Ms. Clancy.
When outspoken Halifax MP Mary Clancy voted for the human rights amendments during second reading last week, some of her constituents were warning her of the ultimate reckoning.
The reaction was people calling me up and telling me that God was going to get me.
This morning came another warning, perhaps one that hits a little closer to home.
This is someone who called from my riding to say, and I quote, he will not vote Liberal in the next election if I continue to support it.
But the threats aren't fazing Clancy. The former family lawyer supports same-sex spousal benefits, yet backs up the Justice Minister's claim that Bill C-33 won't give homosexuals traditional family rights. New Brunswick MP Harold Culbert disagrees. He calls adding sexual orientation to the Human Rights Code redundant.
What it simply does is restate what we already have in Section 51 of the Charter.
Fellow New Brunswick MP Charles Hubbard is also against the bill and the gay lifestyle he says it promotes.
I don't think that people should be in the streets trying to display to other people in the community that they have certain sex values. Sex is a very private part of anyone's living.
With their opinion.
Despite the Reform Party's efforts, today the Prime Minister wouldn't say whether his government has plans to legislate same-sex benefits.
And what the judge decide, they will decide, and if Parliament has to legislate, Parliament will legislate.
Although the bill will likely become law, Roseanne Skoke is calling it a victory.
Made church, and I use that word all-inclusive, become more conscious of the ramifications, the reality of the agenda that's alive and well in Canada.
Liberals that are opposed to the bill will have to wait and see how the courts will interpret the legislation once it becomes law. If same-sex spousal benefits are granted, Roseanne Skoke wants Ottawa to legislate against them. In Ottawa, Jacqueline Milcharak, ATV News.
Other news in Canada tonight, the number of divorces in the land is up slightly. Stats Canada says in 1994, 79,000 marriages ended in divorce. The average marriage lasted about 12.4 years. Most common age for divorce, 40 for men, 37 for women. Internationally tonight, a ceasefire in Liberia has been blasted apart with heavy fighting in the capital city of Monrovia. The bullets were flying down deserted streets like this near the American embassy. Grenade and mortar blasts thundered through the air. Fighting also reported at a bridge leading into Monrovia. The party that has dominated India's politics for nearly 50 years has conceded defeat. Early returns are unclear about who will form the government. The country appears headed for political uncertainty. The main opposition party is the expected winner tonight. Moscow was awash in memories today during a parade to honor those who helped achieve victory in the Second World War. The Allied victory over Nazi Germany is always celebrated with great reverence in Russia. More than 26 million Russians died in the Second World War. And still to come here tonight, meteorologist Steve Weigel with the weather right into the weekends. After this.
An average year so far, but with the way things are shaping up, we get some dry weather, we could be in a fairly serious situation.
Just how prepared are we for forest fire season? That story coming up next as the ATV Evening News continues. Forest rangers across the Maritimes are keeping a close eye on the forest tonight. An early thaw in many parts of the Maritimes has left the forests across the region vulnerable to forest fires. More tonight on the Fire Watch. ATV's Laverne Stewart.
Forest rangers across the region know this will be a busy firefighting season for them. The lack of moisture in the forests from an early thaw this spring means that forests from New Brunswick to Newfoundland are vulnerable.
Well, the earlier that the wood is dried out, naturally that takes away the moisture from the woods, and it means an increase in fire activity as you move into the summer, and that carries right through the year.
Last year, more than $11 million was spent on firefighting across the region.
It is a lot of money, and because it's a lot of money, that it should be impressed on people how important it is to be safe when they're working in the woods.
There have been a total of 210 forest fires in the region so far this year. Nova Scotia has had the majority of those fires, with 124 since March. New Brunswick's had 61 fires so far. Newfoundland has had only 21 so far. That's because there's been cold weather that's kept the number of fires down. On Prince Edward Island, there have been 4 forest fires so far this season.
It's been sort of an average year so far, but with the way things are shaping up, we get some dry weather, we could be in a fairly serious situation.
So firefighters are making sure they're ready for the worst possible fire scenario.
Because there aren't that many fires burning across the region right now, forest rangers take the time to check their equipment for when the real trouble begins later in the season.
And they say anyone going into the woods should use extreme caution. In Fredericton, Laverne Stewart, ATV News.
And Steve Weigel here in just a minute with the very latest on our forest fire weather situation. Stay with us as the ATV Evening News continues. As if to illustrate the dangers of forest fires around this time of year, the Halifax Regional Firefighters are now at the scene of a brush fire in Spryfield. It is about a kilometer back in a wooded area off Herring Cove Road. The word from the fire department tonight is that they are assessing the situation. They'll determine whether a water bomber is required. This fire is not close to any buildings. We are all thinking about just how dry it is out there. Let's get over to meteorologist Steve Weigel, who's looking at the weather for the weekend. Steve?
Yeah, that's right, Steve. We're looking at a forest fire situation that will be helped along by some rain in the forecast for tomorrow. Here's the systems map showing a couple of low-pressure systems back to our west, the jet stream pattern just to the south of the Maritimes, but moving northwards, and that is going to bring the cloud and the showers into Friday and into the weekend, too, as we head towards our Mother's Day weekend forecast. Here is the latest satellite shot the last 24 hours. You can see the cloud developing just back to our immediate west, pushing in closer and closer to the Maritimes. It's already started to move into Maine and will move into New Brunswick and southern Nova Scotia overnight tonight. Here's the forecast in detail across the region. Cloud pushing into the west, clear skies to the east, and that's where we'll see our coolest temperatures, 1 to 4 for overnight lows with a light southwesterly breeze expected overnight tonight. All right, good news for the forest fire index. We've got some rain in the forecast for tomorrow. We'll start off with sunshine in the east. The rain pushes in during the day. 10 to 15 millimeters of rain is expected. That's about ½ an inch of rain. 10 to 14 for daytime highs, the coolest temperatures being along the south shore of Nova Scotia and also up through the eastern shore too. For New Brunswick, rain in the forecast. It'll start by the afternoon, 10 to 12 for those daytime highs, and a southerly wind at 30 and 40 kilometers an hour. So rather gusty out there as we head into the weekend. Here's the weekend forecast. Showers on Saturday, showers on Sunday, developing into periods of rain, and then Monday looks mainly sunny and warmer. Sunshine expected late Saturday in New Brunswick with showers and rain in the forecast for Sunday, and then some sunshine expected for Monday. Steve.
All right, thanks very much, Steve. That is our news for now. For my colleagues on both sides of our cameras, I'm Steve Murphy. Thank you, and good night from the ATV News Team.